44 minutes is the runtime for Punisher One Last Kill without any credits. I enjoyed nearly all of those 44 minutes, but it's half the length of what you'd expect from a normal feature film at 1 hour and 30 minutes. Its runtime is closer to an episode of television, which makes it more difficult to tell a complete story, and that really shows in this special. For the surprisingly dark tone, considering it's now on Disney, and all the slick, enjoyable action, the Punisher special leaves me wishing that we had way more of it. That's a damn shame, because you could literally shoot extra material to extend this out to a feature-length film without cutting anything, and that would have made it really special. I thoroughly enjoyed what we had watching it, but just as we were getting going, it wraps up. It felt like we were leading up for more story that never came. It by no means makes the special bad, it's certainly very entertaining, but on post-analyzing the special, I felt like it needed more. Not that it's ever explicitly confirmed, but I assume the Punisher special takes place directly after the events of Born Again Season 2, which Frank Castle does not appear in. The last time we saw him is escaping from that cage in Season 1 of Born Again, and now he's back on the streets. For the special, Frank has just killed the last people connected with his family's murder. As he's about to give up his life of being the Punisher, he's brought back into the fold by a hit being carried out on him by a surviving member of one of the crime families involved with the murder of his family. That's the setup, and there are some great things that come from it. Number one is when the hit goes out on Frank, there's a near 15-minute The Raid style action sequence taking place in a rundown apartment complex. It's absolutely the highlight of the special, and it had me completely locked in as it was taking place. There's tons of dudes for Frank to take out, all in a manner of different ways, flipping between hand-to-hand combat and gun-shooting action, as to keep us, the viewer, entertained. There's room for the action to breathe as well. Unlike certain other superhero media that will remain unnamed, the boys, the action isn't a quick-cut mess that's hard to watch. You always see what's going on, and it holds on the violence when it needs to. I will say there's a couple dodgy CGI sections in it, however. There's this fall, which lots of people pointed out online, but I didn't notice that while watching. But there's this bit a minute later of Frank jumping off the side here with some very questionable green screen. The latter is the one that took me out the most. I mean, you have to be really looking up close at the other one, but for me, the green screen here is plain as day. One of the great aspects of the Punisher special is how real and tangible the people of New York feel. This is something even Born Again Season 2 doesn't get quite right, but here it actually feels like a lived-in world. There's obviously the small connecting moments, like how we briefly see Frank's neighbor near the start of the special, then when shit goes down in the apartment complex, the goons bust down the neighbor's door instead of Frank's. This puts him back into action to go save the mom and the kid. But there's this great section where Frank is walking down the street of New York, seeing all the chaos, with tons of mini side stories you only briefly catch a glimpse of. It's a very effective way of conveying the chaos that Frank is choosing to ignore without directly putting it in your face. Really smart storytelling, and I love it. Another thing I really liked about it is how dark the special was. Of course, there's the violence. One of the murders near the end of the spree was great for that. But even the tone and the content is very grim. I mean, they literally kill a dog at the start of the special, which I'm extremely surprised they did. But maybe this is a new era of Disney where they can have that darker material. Frank comes very close to ending it all as well, now that he felt like his mission was complete, and he was only brought back into the fold because of the memories of his family. This ties in with the hallucinations Frank's been having. He's seeing his former Marines, especially the character Curtis from the original Punisher series, his wife and children, and he briefly sees Karen Page. The hallucinations of Curtis made me wonder if I missed something and he died, but nope, according to Google, he's still alive, which is good. We wouldn't want another Foggy situation, would we? They do some very cool visual storytelling with Frank's wife Maria and Karen wearing the same top, implying he sees them the same in his mind. Although I will say that the hallucinations just kind of stop when the action scenes begin. And if this was a movie, they would have had much more time to flesh out that element. Hey, I'm also going to be covering Born Again Season 2 very shortly, so if that interests you, please subscribe. Also, if you are looking for some more TV shows, I made one. It's called Midlands Mayhem. It's a 5-part comedy crime miniseries. There's a bit of action, there's a bit of heartbreak, there's a bit of laughs, so you can check it out for free right now on midlandsmayhem.com. Anyway, back to the Punisher special. One of the parts I found really interesting was when Frank was approached by the woman in the wheelchair, who was later revealed to be the Ganucci mother. It's initially presented as she's asking for Frank's help. As she's telling Frank her story, it becomes clear that Frank was the one who killed all of her family, and that was a seriously cool twist. With each of the family members who die in the flashback, you see more and more Frank carrying out those murders. It's very cool that you can put it together yourself before it's revealed. I will say, however, that I found it a bit weird that Frank didn't attack her immediately after revealing she's still connected to the Ganucci family. I mean, that was like his entire mission. She's even in a wheelchair, but maybe it was because of the bodyguard, or that Frank had no weapons? A criticism I'm commonly seeing is Frank is just repeating the same arc he's had in basically every single outing. That arc is realizing that he's not just in it for the revenge, but he's actually doing this to take out the criminals. I can appreciate that what I'm about to say might sound like someone who's never watched season 3 of the Netflix Daredevil and was completely fine with that arc being repeated at the end of season 2 of Born Again, but I personally didn't have an issue with it. That being said, I only watched season 1 of The Punisher years ago. Never realized there was a season 2, even though I enjoyed the show and I would have watched the second. If you remember that series very well though, you are completely valid in being annoyed that they're repeating the same arc, if that's an issue for you. It does come across a little like it's a reintroduction for people who are like me. I mean, I knew who Curtis was, so that wouldn't make sense to anyone who hadn't seen The Punisher show, but hadn't watched it recently enough to remember that this is basically the same arc that he's been having since he was introduced. Also, with the repeating of that arc, they position the Punisher as a hero rather than being some murderous psychopath like he's portrayed in some comics. Now, I'm not big on having to be incredibly faithful to source material if you're able to make something great from it. Take for example The Shining, which famously isn't very faithful to the novel, so much so that Stephen King hated it. However, The Shining turned out great, and is widely remembered as one of the greatest horror movies ever made. If The Shining turned out to be terrible, however, I imagine its biggest complaint would have been that they didn't stick to the source material. What I'm saying is, it's perfectly valid to go in your own direction against the source material if it turns out to be good. But if you fuck it up, then you're gonna get double the backlash. That being said, I have no problem with them positioning the Punisher as a hero instead of a mass-murdering psycho, provided it's compelling, or isn't abundantly obvious how the alternative would have been better. It's got me wondering, however, is this as far as we can go with the Punisher? Is that why his arc is being repeated, because the bulk of his stories are from him being a villain, and that there isn't more to draw from to give him a new character arc to follow? I suppose we'll see when he appears in Brand New Day, but I'll be very surprised if he isn't portrayed as more of a villain slash anti-hero in that film, with Spider-Man having to get in the way of his murders. There has been discourse that the Punisher is much more suited to be a side character in others' media, like Daredevil or Spider-Man, rather than a leading man. We'll have to see when Brand New Day comes out, but all of this is a very long-winded way of saying I don't have a problem with his portrayal as a hero in this special. I'm about to spoil the ending of the special, and come on, it's only 44 minutes, you have the time to watch it. My biggest issue with the special is, I come away feeling a little unsatisfied. After the raid-style action scene, which is fantastic, it just wraps up in the space of 4 minutes. Frank chooses to save a family from earlier in the special instead of taking out the Ganucci mother. The kid from that family gives him a paper flower as thanks for saving them, and this is what motivates Frank to continue on as the Punisher. He goes to the grave of his family and tells them that he's going to keep fighting. Frank then kills the guy who killed the dog at the start of the special, with 10 seconds of the actual Punisher costume, and it just ends. That really felt like a midpoint, or we're about to go into the third act of the film, because there's still the unresolved plot thread of the Ganucci mother. It wasn't presented in a way like Frank couldn't get her at a later point, and his whole motivation was to kill everyone related to his family's death. He was debating giving up because his mission was complete, but decides to take out other criminals. But his mission isn't complete. He still has to kill her. That could have been the climax / third act if this was a movie, infiltrating her mob boss station and taking her out. You could have even had at the start of the film with Frank taking out the Ganucci family. A big opening action set piece leading him into feeling disenfranchised. Then he goes through his full character arc and hunts down the Ganucci mom in the full Punisher costume. Add in a few more dialogue scenes, probably with the hallucination, and bam, you've got a full feature-length run, and everything wouldn't feel so rushed. But unfortunately, we've left a plot thread hanging, and it's unlikely we'll get a resolution to it. I was thoroughly entertained by the Punisher special. It's just unfortunate that it felt like it needed more. If this was a pilot to a new Punisher series, that would have been amazing. I'd be so hyped. Or if they made it into a movie by adding those additional bits, that also would have been fantastic. But as it is, it feels a little incomplete. And that's a shame because there's so much great stuff in it. You as a viewer will probably thoroughly enjoy the special though. Sitting down to analyze the product reveals some of its flaws, but in the moment it was very enjoyable. It's much like Born Again Season 2. This needed more runtime, then it really could have been great.